Is that from last time?
like basic programs you fix, it's putting in bathroom.
No, let's try this
A
one.
good spot for the stairs.
The rendering part is gonna take a lot
Did
of,
you do show mass?
basically use all the resources.
Oh, sorry. Massing. Side. Show mass.
Yeah, there's plenty of them on.
Let me give you my final file on a dump drive. The internet connection was weird yesterday.
Jeremy, did you want the model?
I'll upload it.
Yeah,
Okay, because I just sent you the PDF.
yeah, I need not only your PDFs, but those are the model, if you guys haven't uploaded your
Do you
model.
need just the model, or do you need all the files that go along with the model?
If you just give me the RBT file, the project file, that's all I need, because all your other components should be already embedded into it,
Right.
so I don't need the other ones. Unless you were having some issues with your curtain panel, you couldn't get it to work out, and you might want to upload the one that you were trying to do and show me the progress, or how far you got. You guys can put it on a USB stick, and I can download them right now, or after class.
That's it.
Yeah.
Mine would, the website wouldn't let me send it.
How big's your file? Bigger than 250 megabytes?
Yeah, broke minutes.
Probably if it wasn't busy, it would sit there while.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. I don't know. See if I can fix this one first.
Yeah. Well, uploading will take a little bit of time, and then, especially if your files like they might take 15 minutes to upload.
Does
So
leaving like families loaded into the project that you're not really using anymore, leaving those in that project would make the file a lot bigger?
yeah, you can purge your file, but
I didn't never moved any of the older versions of it, like that and stuff to that load.
yeah,
There's a bunch of them in there. I was wondering if that's why my file was so big.
yeah, it's probably not unless you have a lot. Let's say you have your bridge, the compilation file of the bridge. You loaded that in like 2 or 3 times, with different panels or whatever. Then you finally had another one come in, like you had version 1 through 3. Those are going to take up a lot. So you might check that out. We're going to need the file where we ended up last class.
That's what my mom started doing.
That sounds terrible.
Where am I looking, David?
It should be site model underscore final, or Christie underscore final. I forget if I renamed it.
Site model final.
Yep.
There's another one here. This is site model with canopy.
No, it's site model final.
That's not always the best way to solve this. Sure. Not always.
You're not talking.
Not really.
So I took a look at the exhibit by the library. It looks really good. So thank you guys for doing that and getting that up. This way we get a little bit of an exposure to the rest of the school. Everyone can see what you guys have been working so hard on. We're going to leave those up until Thursday night, and then we have to take down those basically all the drawings by Thursday night, because there's something scheduled for Friday in that space. So try to leave them up as long as possible, and maybe after next class, that would be a good time to take them down. Did anybody, I know there's a few issues, did anyone not get their drawings pinned up? Okay. We're going to start off with kind of where we left off last class. If you can load up your file that you were working with, and I'm actually going to delete the massing model that we were working with. You need your USB stick. And for those of you that did not turn in your final model, I did get, I think, everyone's PDFs. But I also need your Revit model so that I can open it up and take a look at it when I'm grading. So if it was taking forever to upload, because I do have a maximum limit of 250 megabytes file capacity, but I can always raise that up because I do have unlimited capacity, but I did put a little script on there to limit 250 megs. So if your file is pretty large and you don't want to sit there and wait for it to upload, if you want at the end of class, you can give me a USB stick and I'll try to transfer it onto the computer here. In this file, I think we had about 57 levels. I'm going to delete level 57 through, let's keep it on up to level 26. I'm going to do level 26 through level 57. I'm going to select all of them in the project browser, and right click on it, and then just hit delete. The other item is we need to go back into our site plan. So if we go into the floor plans and then click on site, one thing you'll notice is that right now we have basically a model that is oriented to true north. But if we look at our site, our site is right here, is this rectangle that's kind of skewed at about 45 degrees. And while we're working in Revit, everything that we do essentially eventually has to end up on a drawing sheet somewhere. And when we apply or drag any kind of floor plan onto a drawing sheet, it can only rotate 90 degrees. So we can't actually model in this particular direction. We actually need to rotate our view and then also orient true north back to its original or relative to the way that we rotate the site. So what I'm going to do is draw in the site plan under annotate. I'm going to use my construction lines that I call them, these detail lines. Click on detail line and my line style will be lines. And I'm going to draw from this point, this origin point, I'm just going to draw a vertical line. I'm also going to draw from that point as well a horizontal line. And then I'm going to use the pick lines command and pick this angle that also starts off at our origin point. And I might, after I do that, drag the end point out a little bit. So I've kind of got these construction lines of how I could actually rotate my model at the moment. Other thing I want to do is, while I have the annotate tool ribbon open, let's go ahead and select angular dimensions. And we're going to take an angular dimension between both of these so that I can get an actual reading of what the angle is that we're going to have to rotate. I'm going to actually change my scale right now. The scale is like 1 inch equals 20 feet. I think I'm going to bump it up to 1 inch equals 200 feet, just so I get I can actually read my dimension strings. You notice that your elevation markers, they kind of go haywire right now. They're kind of big. We're not going to position those yet, but if we want to get rid of those for the moment, since they're kind of in the way, let's type in VG for our visibility graphics and go under annotation categories, and you can scroll down and turn off the elevations. That basically takes away those tags that indicate north, south, east, and west elevations. Before we continue, I'm going to do a save as here real quick. Class.
What did you pick this line here in the center to get the, to extend out there?
Yeah, so this line, if on the angle, if I went into annotate and I used the detail lines and then draw pick lines, and I selected that, and then while it's selected, there's a little drag handle, and all I did was drag that out and kept it locked, kind of in position. Okay, so if we tab over our origin point, and unfortunately zooming in doesn't make it any bigger, it always stays that size on the screen. I'm going to turn off up at the quick access toolbar at the very top, I'm going to turn off all the line weights so that when I do zoom in, at least I don't have these large blobs everywhere. But I'm going to tab over this origin point and keep tabbing until I can select the project base point. It should be called site and then project base point. You might have to tab over. I had to tab over about 5 or 6 times. But you'll notice that when you tab over and you finally are able to select that site project base point, you get these coordinates that pop up that talk about north, south, east, west, your elevations. Everything's at 0, 0, 0. And then there's also another item in text at the very bottom called angle to true north. That's something we are going to eventually enter in to be able to actually orient our model correctly. First thing I'm going to do is select our lower Manhattan model. I'm just going to left click on it. And then we can select the rotate button. And remember, when we rotate anything, it always wants to rotate it about its center. So we have to kind of find that center rotation point. And you should see, it's hard to see up there because everything's blue, but there is a blue dot right there, kind of in the middle, close to the middle of Manhattan, lower portion right there. We can take that blue dot, left click and hold, and drag it until we get down to our origin point. I'm going to tab over till I actually get the point snap to show. By doing that, we are repositioning the center of rotation, and so now I've made it so that we can actually rotate this model about our origin point. So now it's asking for the first reference. I'm going to select this, the angled line that we drew. I'm going to select that one first. And then I'm going to rotate down until I get to the horizontal. That line down at the bottom isn't horizontal. Let's make sure our line is horizontal. Somehow everyone double check your lines. I kind of wasn't paying attention there. Your angle should be 48.22 degrees. So anyway, I'm going to go back and repeat the step. I'm going to hit select and then rotate. I need to zoom out, find my point, my origin point, drag it down to the center, my origin. And I'm going to snap to this angle line and then the horizontal line and rotate the lower Manhattan so that our site is actually rectangular and it's more horizontal, kind of looking like how you might actually place it on a drawing sheet.
How did you edit your angle? Did you just type it in there?
No, I just, I rotated it by, when I selected this, I moved my origin point, the
So you
center.
were saying that yours wasn't 48.22.
Oh, I redrew, I deleted this horizontal, my line was slightly off axis, I deleted it and did it horizontal again. But if you wanted to, you could, you should be able, you could also select that line, the horizontal line, and because you have that dimension of the 48.22, it'll pop up blue, and you could actually edit that dimension as well at that location. So basically what we've done is we've set up our site so that we can actually, when we start to model our floor plans, and you can kind of imagine that your floor plans are going to have to fit within the site, so within this box somewhere, we actually have some kind of orientation that will actually fit on a sheet pretty well. The only issue is that if we turn on our sun path diagram, and I'm going to use whatever the current settings were, you notice that the north is still pointing up. That's because basically right now Revit is still thinking that true north is straight up on this drawing, but we've just rotated our whole entire model, so we need to reposition exactly where true north is so that when we start doing our solar path studies, shade and shadow studies, or even start doing renderings, we have our accurate sun positions. So in order to do that, if we can look at our angle here, we know that we just rotated our lower Manhattan 48.22 degrees, but really we rotated it 41.78 degrees from true north. You see that up at the top? We had this other angle here. True north was straight up, and we actually just rotated in this direction. So I'm going to tab over. Let's see if we get this right. Tab over until I can get my site project base point to load up. And then I can click on the blue text called angle to true north. And we can type in, well, I guess actually we should type in 48.22. Because if we rotate it at 48.22, we're actually, so number lock. My number lock's not on. And then I'm going to type in under the angle to true north 48.22. Now when you zoom back out, the solar or the sun path diagram does not update. It doesn't update until we mess around with the sun a little bit. And so if you can drag the sun, or if you don't have a sun to drag, pick a new date, do some kind of item on this sun path diagram that would make it basically refresh with a new change. As soon as you do that, you'll get the solar path diagram to rotate so that north should be aligned to our angle there. So it actually looks like I should have done the 41.78. So I was right the first time. So I'm going to go back and tab over and type in 41.78. And again, I need to refresh my sun path by just kind of moving something. So now we actually have our drawing set up so that we can place it on a sheet, and then we also have our sun path diagram where it's actually going to be oriented to true north. Next thing I'm going to do is under my sun, if I click on sun settings, let's go ahead and change our location now because we know where we're located. I'm going to click on that button, and let's go ahead and type in our project address is New York City.
Where's the button?
It's just like still, I believe.
So I have it on still, and then I did, you should get these settings over here that say location, and there's a button right here off to the far right. You can also change your location. Right now I changed it to New York, New York. You could also go under manage and then location. That would give you the option to change your project location as well. And all I did was in the project address, I typed in New York, New York, and hit OK, and that should set your location. Okay, so before we can really continue massing, did everyone get all of this set up? Okay, so before we can actually continue massing, and we can actually get more specific about our location. Looks like Dan's already moving your. I go under manage and location. And expand my map dialog box. You can kind of zoom in on New York and you could actually pick our actual site, find the actual address. So, but as far as the sun's concerned, you're really not gonna, that won't matter too much. All right, so in order to start actually working within the site, we have to know a couple of our constraints. And in any kind of site that you work with, whether it's in an urban area or even a rural area, or even just kind of in a neighborhood somewhere, you're going to have to know a little bit about zoning laws in order to figure out exactly how much of a volume we can actually fill on this site. I provided on our website the whole entire New York zoning book that you're welcome to look through, but you kind of need to be a rocket scientist to understand the New York zoning laws. I was kind of exploring and reading through it all. It's not very straightforward, much like if you're working in Charlotte, essentially they tell you if you're on this site, your setbacks are going to be 30 feet from the front street, maybe 15 feet from the side. Your rear yard would be maybe 10 feet, and you can only go X amount of feet high. In New York, their zoning laws basically have, and let me load up that book real quick. You can go to our website. And under resources, or actually our class, it's hot in here.
Tell us about it.
Did they turn on the heat?
We think they might have.
I think it is turned off, just hasn't switched over yet.
I think that the air was blowing when I came in. Yeah, I felt it walking through.
You can put it on that side of the building.
But under our BIM methods and then resource downloads, from the last class I had the New York zoning regulations, this PDF file. Also I have a New York zoning glossary illustrated. If you click on that, that's actually a link that kind of describes all the terms that you would come across in a zoning book. And why can't I scroll? Wait a minute. Somehow my internet just froze up on me. All right. So if you could click on that link and scroll, you would actually see a couple things that I actually need you to look at. Let me close this for some reason. It locked up on me. Okay. So when you start scrolling through, they give you the definitions of what your building envelope would be. And it's basically, this is just a glossary. It all depends on your particular zoning location. In our zoning map that we actually loaded up the other class when we were scaling our site is located, you can kind of see it if we can't zoom in. our site is located right here where it says Financial Square, and then there's a number here called C6-9. That would be your zoning for our particular site. So anytime you look at our zoning regulations, maybe I'll just go back. We could do a search in the Adobe PDF. We could just do like a edit, find, and I could type in a C6-9, and that would start to take me through all the instances where C6-9 is brought up in the zoning laws. And you can see this is a 3,455 page document. It's a little extreme for a zoning document, but you can imagine that being in New York City, there are a lot of rules and regulations that are built upon, a long history and establishment of all the different sites that you can come across and possible conditions. One of the nice, unique things about New York City is they have a lot of, you scroll down to development rights, you can actually build on top of other buildings. Which is kind of interesting. So there's a lot of zoning laws that talk about how you could, if your building becomes taller than another one, you can start to claim their rooftop. I'm not sure how you exactly go through the paperwork on getting that one taken care of, but it's kind of interesting that you could start to build or claim rights on top of another piece of property as you go up. And then there's ways of, they talk a lot about floor area ratio. So you could either fill up your whole entire site, but if your square footage is limited and you actually want to make a tower, you have to take up less of the site. So there's basically all these rules built into the zoning laws that start to give back a lot more space to the site as you go up. Also, as you scroll down, you'll come across another thing called the sky plane. When you get to a certain location, you have a building setback. So that you can start to establish a sky exposure plane, and at some point, depending on your zoning district, it's dictated in the book exactly how high your base can be before you have to start stepping back. They give you these angles of, depending on where you're located, your angle might be, for every 7 feet that you go up, you have to come in 2 feet, and that's where the sky exposure plane starts to come into play. I assume a lot of you have done some projects in New York for a studio. Have you guys done anything with the zoning in any of your classes a little bit? How far, how deep did you guys get into the zoning book?
My 5th year project's there, so I was just kind of looking at basic occupancy loads and permits and things like that, things that were building heights and stuff like that. Not terribly in depth, but.
Yeah, I started to go through this document because I was hoping to find, kind of like in basically Charlotte, or even when I've worked in Hawaii and Arkansas and all these other places, you can open up a zoning book and say, okay, this is my site, and they just give you a chart and they give you all the info, like here's your setback, here's how high you can go, and it's all in one place. This book is more about, for instance, I'm over here and if I scroll to, let me find the section here. I'll be in this particular section and it references my zoning district, and then as I'm reading it, it says, well, I can go look at section 32-653 to go find out more information. When you go to that section, it refers you somewhere else. It's actually just like reading a code book, and you kind of have to hunt all around, and I could never find a straight answer on all the items that I'm looking for. So what we're going to do for this class is I've made up to the best of my ability, based off of this document, some zoning laws that we're going to use for our site. And we're going to build a zoning mass in class today that will essentially be your limits of basically your boundary of where your hotel is going to have to be located. Does that make sense? Instead of having you guys do a bunch of research and try to figure this stuff out, we could save that for your 5th year studio, and maybe Clint, you can come back and give us a report on how to, what you found. Where's your site at?
Midtown, well, Chelsea, so uptown from where our site is.
So I was able to obtain, some information like maximum height in feet for, of course, right now I'm in something about signs, but I came up with a floor area or floor area ratio. I also had our maximum base height. I did find that information, our maximum building height, and then our angle for our sky exposure plane. The only thing I could not find was our actual setback, so I'm just going to apply some common knowledge setbacks to our site. So now that we have our site and everything's been rotated, what I would like to do is we can get into a 3D view. Also, let's go back into our site view and turn on our visibility graphics and turn back on our elevation tags. Another reason why we rotated our site was so that now when we take a north, south, east, and west elevation, we're actually going to see our building not at an angle. We'll actually see, the actual faces of the project. And if I change my scale right now, it's 1 inch equals 200 feet. If I go back to 1 inch equals, originally it was 1 inch equals 20, and zoom back in, I can take these elevation tags and I can window around it. So I'm going to take my north, and I'm just going to move and drag it to the north of my site. I'll do the same thing with the east. I'll just kind of center them as best I can, eyeballing it, so that when we actually take an elevation view, we will see our site. And I'll probably move this elevation tag so that it's not in the building, and it's just a little bit north of our boundary line. Now in this view, actually, if we can click on level 1, I'm going to draw a couple just sketch lines again using my annotation and detail lines. And I'm going to pick each of these lines that make a boundary around our site. So I'm just clicking all four sides of our site. And I'm going to use the offset command. And I'm going to establish kind of a maximum footprint of where we can actually build. Now, I know that this building has a wall that's on this north side of the site, and this has a lot of glass. You can imagine this whole entire tower has glass on all 4 sides. So when we build our tower, we're not going to want to build right up against this particular building. And actually by code, we're not going to be able to, because there's such things as fire separation distances. And in the building code, the International Building Code, when you start to build on a site, you have to assume a property line. When we have a property line that's right here, that's essentially the face of this building, we are actually going to assume that we can build, if this is the face of the building, that the actual property line by code is going to be 30 feet away from this building face. So I'm going to draw a line, just strike a dimension, and then select that line, and then type in 30 feet.
Are you drawing a detail line?
Yeah, just detail lines. Now I'm in my level 1 view. Now that is going to be what's called the assumed property line. I don't actually know where the real property line is for this site based on the information that I have. But in most cases by code, if you assume 30 feet away from a building, that will give you what's called an assumed property line. Then the code has also built into it with the International Building Code, when you look at your building, how far an exterior wall could be from a property line, your wall can only be another 30 feet. Has to be 30 feet or greater. Basically, the rule that's set up there is that if you're 30 feet or greater, you don't have to fire rate any of your exterior walls. So the closer you get to the adjacent building, the more fire ratings that you're going to have to start to implement onto your wall, which means less glass that you can have on your project.
How do you change I can't change the dimension value.
You have to select the item that you actually want to move. So I'm selecting the line, then your dimension turns blue and you can select it. You never select the dimension string, you're always selecting the component that you're trying to move.
Is that in project files? I mean, we've done it differently before.
We've always selected the item. You're thinking about then setting the parameter. Whenever you set a parameter, like a dimension to the parameter, we would actually select the dimension, and then you could, switch it to a particular label. So my next line, I'm actually just going to click the offset button, and then at the very top here, I can change the value. I'm going to type in 30 feet, and I'm going to do another offset 30 feet in. So these are just multiple ways of finding 60 feet away from this building face is exactly where our building can kind of stop. I'm also going to say that our building setbacks from all 3 sides of the streets will also be 30 feet back. I'm just going to say we're just going to use 30 feet all around. So I'm going to use my offset, and let's create kind of a box, rectangle, that shows that this is our site, and now we've got kind of a boundary where we can locate our mass.
If you pick the other lines. If you pick the other lines.
Did you use the home, or did you draw your annotation lines and then pick lines right here?
We'll do that again. Is it on?
Annotate. Click on detail lines. And then pick lines. So you can pick those, and once you have those selected, now you can offset them. So you should be able to use your offset right there. Okay. Did you use the trim and extend the corners? After I was done, I used the trim and extend the corners to clean it up. Okay, so next I'm going to draw a mass, and if we go under massing in site, let's go ahead and make an in-place mass, just like we did last class. I'm going to do in-place mass. We'll get this warning that pops up. Go ahead and hit close. And let's call this mass-zoning. Once we do that, we get into the sketch mode, kind of back into our conceptual mass environment. And again, I'm going to use the pick lines command, and I'm going to pick the lines that we just drew that were 30 feet off of all of our boundaries. And when I click on those lines, I can now click on my 3D view, and I can take that rectangle that we just drew and then select create form, and that will create an extrusion. And I'm just going to hit finish mass so that I can save my project, since I have this kind of set up at the moment. If you just click your line, so I selected all 4 lines around my site, and I selected the area and then did create form. That'll make a straight extrusion. Just select create form, select your item and then create form. We just got done doing conceptual massing.
Well, you gotta stick with the terms, not creating extrusion, I'll go with something else.
We're good at making complex geometry and we can't make a straight extrusion, huh? Just picking on you guys. All right, do I need to repeat how to make that extrusion? Does everyone have that? Okay. I'm gonna go back into my mass. And let me go ahead and dissolve this. So does everyone have their boundary? If you have your boundary selected, all I did was in level 1, because we drew our annotation lines, just delete that. I used draw pick lines and I selected all 4 sides of those particular lines, and after I was done, I went into a 3D view. Then I selected that rectangle again, and then you have the opportunity to click create form, and I made a solid form. I then finished the mask so that I could actually save my file, because whenever you're in a sketch mode, you can't save your file. And that should give you this box. Basically, it extrudes it up kind of a default of probably like 10 or 20 feet. After I exit it out, I'm going to actually go back in now. I can go to edit and place. After you select your mask, to go back into the masking mode, click on edit and place, and that will get us back into our mask. I'm going to, so is everyone in there? Sorry, I need to back out. Let's finish your mass, and we need to hide our, let's go into like an east elevation, and let's hide this model temporarily. And I'm going to zoom in. I'm in the east elevation. I'm kind of looking at my east. I'm going to look at my north. I'm going to hide my city in each of these views. So I'm just going into each elevation view and temporarily hiding the element. And while I'm in my east and west, I see that my datum lines don't stretch all the way through my mask that we just created. So I'm going to select one of these lines. These are all grouped. Remember we arrayed, in the last class we arrayed these all the way up using the array command. What that does is when you array something, it puts it into a group. In order to edit these items, I'm going to select all of my levels again, and I'm going to ungroup these so that they're their own individual entity. This way, when I draw or click on a datum line and stretch that outside end or that end point, they all should move because they're all locked together. And I'm mostly going to go back into my east elevation. Okay, that worked as well.
Is that ungroup button supposed to show up?
It'll show up once you select the items in the group. So I selected all of those datum lines, and then you should get an ungroup.
And if you don't get one, they're not grouped?
There's a group button, does that mean they're not grouped?
It's possible if you, basically if you hover over any of these datum lines, if there's a kind of a additional dashed line around, that means it's a grouped item. So if I were to take both of these, let me Let me group these real quick.
If I select them individually, it says ungrouped, but not altogether.
It's possible you have one item, you're selecting multiple items. So another thing that you can do while you're doing selections, I'm gonna undo, so I've got everything back here. If you select more than one item, you could always use your filter. Click on filter, and you could then uncheck levels and mass, and you should only have the model groups selected. And once you have that, you should have the ungroup as an option. So all I did was stretch my datums through my mass again. All right, so my other rule is that this mass can only go up to 110 feet as the maximum base height. And if I zoom in on my levels, I can see that level 9 is at 105 feet. So I could do a couple things. I could either draw another datum line and make that 110 feet, or I could just go ahead and move this up to level 9. And from level 9, or actually, if you just, sorry, a little mixed up here. If I select I'm looking at my elevation view, I'm in the east elevation of that mass, and I'm going to draw a measurement from the baseline, and then I'm going to snap to the top of my mass. Once I do that, I can select my mass, and then I have the opportunity to enter in a dimension, so I could enter in 110 feet. And that's going to move everything up, and then I can stretch that base back down, and I could even lock it to the bottom level. So basically all you're trying to do is get your mass to be at 110 feet, because that is the maximum base that we can have before we have to start measuring in on our sky plane, sky exposure plane.
How did you get it to go straight back down without moving? Like, can you, like ortho, is there a way
To go back down. So all I did was I selected the mass, and you get these drag handles,
okay.
and you can actually just drag this up and down.
Oh, you locked the dimension and then did that.
Yeah, what I did is I had my mass floating up here, and then I just dragged that handle down, and when you snap to that lower datum line, then that's when I hit the lock button, just so it doesn't float up again.
Hey Jeremy, I'm having like some major difficulty selecting that 80.
Yeah. Did you select your mass?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when I click on the number, it like locks it back out.
Did you make a dimension line from the datum,
Mm-hmm.
and then you snap to this mass?
I've tried it locking it online.
So select your mass.
Yeah, because you came over here at work.
Who else needs,
Whatever.
needs me to stop by? Yeah, I did it after I moved, so unlock that, and then,
You mentioned the wrong thing. You're supposed to change the data line.
If I drag this to mass, it moves.
You're missing the data line. Move this. Okay, to the top of this. Yeah. Oh, okay. And then if I drag and then get on and go. You have to do something else. Now pull it down. I was trying, I don't know either, I think.
And that's where you all messed up. That's pretty cool. I guess it's running hot.
So you should be able to move it in if you can put it. And then if you select the bottom of your mask, and then so you might need to zoom in a little bit. Go straight up. Select that. And if you have that 110 feet, you don't have to really worry about if it's locked or not. All right. So the next thing that I want to do is my maximum height of my mast or of my building can only be, let's see, 575 feet. Is that right? Why did I pick that number? What's that?
Sounds like a good number.
Probably because I want to go up to level 40. I think I probably just picked that number so that we could be higher than the next, possibly higher than the next building over. So that's all. No rhyme or reason to that. But our sky exposure plane is supposed to be 7.6 to 1. So in this model, I'm going to actually be, I'm looking at the east elevation under annotate and detail line. I'm going to draw a line 7'6" up and come in 1 foot. And then I can draw an angle. By the time I get to level 40. I wonder, hold on a second. Well, let's see what 7.6 to 1 does, and we might modify this so that we could actually have a building by the time we get to the top. But what I'm doing is, does everyone have your angle? I typed in, I went up straight 7.6 feet, and then I came in 1 foot. Then I drew an angle from each endpoint. And then I'm going to go up to, let's see, level 40. And your levels might be different, but just pick a level that's close to 575 feet. I'll just go up to level 40 for now on mine, which is at 570 feet. And I will draw another annotation line by clicking on this datum at level 40. What this allows me to do is I'm going to trim and extend this angle. So I'm zooming back in on the angle. And then I'm coming up to my annotation line. And I'm mostly going to trim and extend. I'm basically making a bigger triangle now. That's not too bad. We're still going to have some building left. And the reason I did that is I went all the way to the top so that I could get a dimension of 61 foot 4 inches from this vertical line to where this angle ends up. Does everyone have a big triangle? I'm basically just using these annotation lines as a means of figuring out my math for me so that I don't have to, actually figure out this angle and the tangent and do all that kind of crazy stuff that we used to do. Everyone have this? Or still working on it?
Where does the triangle start?
It's starting at the top of 110 feet.
110 feet?
Yep.
And what is the angle again? What's like the right over line?
I did 7.6 feet up and then 1 foot over.
Okay.
I think originally there, when I was looking at our site, it said something like 2.6 to 1. And if we did that, we would,
Yeah.
so I kind of made up another number as I found it. All right, everyone have this?
What's the top dimension?
Your top dimension, or at least mine, is 61 feet 4 inches. Depending on where you went up to, my level 40 is at 570 feet. Obviously, if your level is at a different height or dimension, then you will have a different angle or a different length. Whatever your length is when you strike this dimension, what I did is I clicked on annotate, align dimensions. I first selected this vertical line, and then I hovered over till I could select the point of that line, and that gave me my dimension string. So whatever your dimension turns out to be, write that down. So I've got 61 foot 4. And I just realized I didn't really need to, we're going to do a couple things here. Take your mass that we just, set to 110 feet. Let's go ahead and drag. I may have to unlock it. Drag that handle at the very top. I'm dragging it all the way to the top here.
Hey Jimmy, what are your floor to floor heights?
I think I did them at 15 feet. Last class when we did the array.
For whatever reason, when I don't know if it was when we rotated them or something, but it messed it all. They're all like fractions now.
Is there a way to change it without having to redraw them?
Just delete them all into an array and get them all right back to 15.
Yeah, you could do that, or you can select each one individually and you'd have to change that temporary dimension.
We're doing it right.
Probably better to delete them all. Don't worry about the exact numbers at the moment. You can always kind of adjust them. And obviously I don't need, looks like we went up pretty high last class. We can delete the ones that are above.
I only have like 49 feet at the top of that triangle. That's mine as well. I'm on like level 44, so it should actually be bigger than that.
What are your floor to floor heights?
15?
And you started at,
Check the first triangle.
you started at 110 feet? Actually, I started at 105 feet. No, I didn't. I started at 110. And you drew a vertical line 7.6 feet up,
7.5 feet.
7.6 feet. Nope, 7.6. Because that's the number that was in the zoning book. There was a 2.6 to 1, which was originally there, and I changed it to 7.6. 7.6 would be something like close to 7 foot 8 inches. Or closer to 7 foot 7. So just type in 7.6 feet, and then that will give you your, wait, type in 7, what happened? So I typed in, that's where I typed in 7.6. Let me try again.
I got 7.6 and mine ended up being 60 foot 6 inches and some change.
Yeah, my
Seven.
angle just changed.
7.6 feet. 1 foot. So 7.6 feet comes to 7 foot 7 and 3/16. Awesome. And change my angle.
When don't you put stuff like that, I did that in last time, if you do the command for showing stuff.
What's the weather?
I'm still getting 61 foot 4 inches.
That changed, and I got 60 feet, some change.
Well, I'm not going to worry about the exact number here, just as long as you have a number that we can work with. So what I'm going to do now is we can go into level 40, and of course, since we deleted all of our levels, and I did this on purpose so that we could reiterate some of the things that we went over last class, since you guys are still in bridge mode. I deleted all of those so that basically you see that from level 26 through level 40, all of your datum's turned to black, meaning that there's no floor plan associated with the project in the project browser anymore. But I really want to be able to draw on my level 40 floor plan, because what I'm going to do is take my profile and I'm going to offset it in 61 foot 4 inches, and that's going to give me kind of my top boundary, and then I'll loft my mass together to find my zoning mass. So in order to make this into a floor plan again, I have to click on View, Plan Views, and if I click on Floor Plan, it will pop open a dialog box that gives me an option to pick level 26 through 40. For right now, I'm just going to click on level 40 and hit OK, and I now have a floor plan that's associated with level 40. That's why we deleted all that. I just wanted to go over that step one more time.
Do yours skip a number? Like, did
Yeah,
you- okay.
yeah. Mine skips level 3
Okay.
because remember in our example I deleted level 3, but then we arrayed it
That's right.
and we ended up with a level 4. We might throw in a level 3 in between as a mezzanine or something someday. Okay, so got this mass. Let me edit in place real quick. So I clicked, I'm in a 3D view now. That's why I picked 575 feet. That's how tall the other building is. That's the reasoning, right there. This building is 575 feet. That's why this one's 575 feet. All right, so I went back into the mass, clicked on Edit Profile or Edit Form, or Edit Mass. That'll take you back into your conceptual design environment. And when I select, I'm going to tab over my mass, and we're going to add a profile. I'm going to click Add Profile. When you add a profile, you can hover over your mass, and you can see you get this little section cut.
Did you do edit in place?
Yeah, Edit in place. And then I'm going to just pick a spot location for that profile. We can also click on our mass and let's turn on the X-ray mode. This way we can actually see the profile when it's done.
What was the profile selection?
Profile selections, if you tab over your mass until you can select the whole thing, you get these additional buttons that pop up, and you can turn on X-ray. So I clicked on X-ray, and then you can also add a profile, which will add a horizontal cut. After I do that, I'm going to click on an east elevation so that I can see my profile in elevation. And this time I can mass went down below the grade. This mass is not acting right. Hold on one second. Okay, does everyone have your profile? Profile, no, yes, no? All right, if you're in a 3D view and you have your X-ray view turned on, I'm going to tab over until I can select that center black point. Just want the point. So in my 3D mode, again, I'm going to tab over until I can select this point. And then under your quick access toolbar, click on switch windows, and let's switch into an east elevation. That will allow us to still have our point selected, and we still have this drag handle. And I can drag this down. I didn't get the point by itself. It selects the rectangle plus the point. And I'm going to get that close as possible to 110 feet. For some reason I can't dimension to that point. I originally did a dimension to each of these lines. Well, I guess this would work. If I select each one of these edges one by one, you get a temporary dimension that goes to the bottom of your mass. I could type in 110 feet, but I have to do this on each. Okay, that one.
Must be an error.
What's your error?
You say you were saying click on one of these lines here.
Yeah.
And set that dimension to 110.
Yeah.
Maybe 230.
Well, just try to get that as close as possible to 110 feet. Just going to drag it up and down for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, after getting that set up, select the mass and dissolve it. That makes it so that I have a profile edge at the base at the 110-foot mark, and then at the very top of our building. If I click into level 40, I'm going to offset 61 foot 4 inches, because that's what that top dimension was. And I'm going to select only the lines that were associated with the outside boundary. I'm not going to worry about this southern line, just the ones that fronted the street. If I look at my 3D, and then I need to trim and extend, or trim, extend to corner that last piece so that I can then delete those exterior lines so that they became unconnected. So you should have this little rectangle at the top. Then when I'm done, I'm just going to select all 3 of these and create a solid form. And finish my mass and hit save. Constraints are not satisfied. I removed my constraints, I don't care. My computer's acting a little funny, so I'm going to hit save.
How do you remove your,
I just hit remove constraints.
where's that
It says right there at the very bottom on your dialog box.
at? Just delete them right there?
Yeah, whatever.
Do you want to do one solid mass, or are you doing 2 different masses where it's like curved?
We're going to do one solid mass.
For the top floor, did you say?
Or curved?
What?
Or how do we figure all that?
You don't, it automatically makes it curved.
We can't.
This is just a zoning mass. It's just going to be a big bubble that you can't poke out of.
Were you still in the unfinished mass whenever you went to the top floor and did the offset of those lines?
Yeah.
Did you offset these directly? Did you have to trace the outline first?
You can just hit offset, and then 61 foot, and then you can hover over those lines.
Did they disappear like that?
You may have to click into a 3D view and see what's going on. So it's there, it's just for some reason in that view they're going away. Okay, now what I'm going to do is kind of what we did last class, is remember we had a mass floor schedule, and I actually need to go into an elevation view again. I don't need to, but I'm going to make floor or plan views of all of my other views. So go back to view, plan views, floor plan, and select the remaining one of these and hit OK. Give it a minute. And in our 3D view, we can select that mass again, and I'm going to create some mass floors. So select the mass, click on mass floors, and then I'm going to select all of these levels. And what I'm doing is we've already set up a mass floor area schedule, remember? That's already in the model, and if we just reapply a set of mass floors to the zoning mass, we can look at our schedule and we can see that that zoning mass has a total square footage, if we were to actually fill up the whole entire zoning area, of 874,971 square feet.
How did you get to that?
How do I get to where?
To the, where it shows you,
So do you have all your floors made?
yes.
Does everyone still have a mass floor schedule in your? Okay, I'm going to delete my mass floor schedule. Okay, everyone have their mass floors? Yes, no? I just clicked on the mass and then there's a button up at the top right that says mass floors. And when you click on that, you can highlight levels 1 through 40 and then just make sure they're checked and then you hit OK.
It's not leveling off, so this edge. I can't figure out one.
Let's look at it after class. Okay, so at the end of last class, and here we are again at the end of this class, we created a mass floor schedule. I want to know, if I were to fill up the zoning mass, exactly how many square feet of floor area do I actually have? So in order to calculate this, I have already mass floors applied. I can click under View, and then under Schedules, click on the down arrow and click on Schedule and Quantities. This brings up a method for creating a schedule, and in Revit, any kind of component that's a 3D element can be scheduled. And you'll notice that these categories, there's multiple categories, but there's also floors, doors, curtain panels, plumbing, railings, and so on. Those all equal categories that are in your visibility graphics, which also equals exactly what all of your families are modeled under. So basically anything that falls under those particular categories that are already pre-programmed into Revit, you can schedule some kind of amount of information and extract that from those elements. I'm going to click on mass floors, click on OK, and you get this other dialog box that opens up. This gives you on the left all of the available fields to schedule for this particular schedule called mass floor. I'm going to schedule the level, which is the name of each level, so I should have level 1 through 40. I'm going to add that to the right side of my screen by clicking the Add button. I then want to know the floor area of each of those levels. And I'll click on floor area. When I'm done, I'll get a schedule that gets generated that has information about levels 1 through 39. And it didn't pick up level 40 because my mass doesn't actually penetrate through level 40, so it didn't create a floor on the roof. So I have 1 through 39, and then I have all these areas that are showing up to the right. These buttons that are off to the left in the Properties dialog box, you can see it says Fields, Filter, Sorting, Formatting, and Appearance. Doesn't matter which one of these you pick, you can just click on Edit, because those tabs also equal, or these buttons equal the same tabs that are in this schedule. You can see Fields, Filter, Sorting, Formatting, and Appearance. Now what we have to do is specify under Sorting that we want to itemize every instance, so that's every level 1 through 39, and we would like it to calculate a grand total. So click on grand total, and we could just choose totals only as our drop-down option. And then I have to click under Formatting, and then also click on Floor Area, and there's a little button over to the right here that says this could be a hidden field or you want it to calculate totals. If I want this to grand total and actually calculate, I have to choose that option, calculate totals. Also, to kind of clean this up a little bit, I can click on Field Format and uncheck the Use Project Settings box. And this enables me to change the rounding. So right now I'm just going to round to the 0 decimal place. I want the units and square footage. And then I also want to use digit grouping. So I clicked on use digit grouping. When I exit out of that, it gives me the nice little comma, that separates your digits at every 3 digits. So when I'm done, what that does is it gives me a total number of 874,971 square feet. You may be close to that or some number close to that. What that tells me is if you look back in our syllabus and you look at our project narrative under the building program for part 2, Part 2 project narrative, I gave a total square footage of what our hotel is going to be. Our total hotel square footage is 191,270 square feet. And you remember I talked about that's net square footage? We need net square footage, but we're actually modeling at the moment gross square footage. So I applied a scale factor of either 1.3 or 1.5 to this number to come up with a new square footage. If I'm going to type in a number here real quick. Let's go to accessories, calculator. Type in 191,270, and I'll just do the maximum. I'll do that times 1.5. We'll see that our total gross square footage for our hotel will be about, let's just say 287,000 square feet. So you can see that within our zoning mass, we are well under exactly, we're not ever going to fill up this 874,000 square foot because the owner is only going to be building a 287,000 square foot mass. Now that we have this floor schedule calculating all the floor areas, you can go ahead and start modeling and massing an idea for your hotel using the same techniques and creating your own mass floor schedule for your hotel instead of that zoning mass. You might just write down this number, 875,000 square feet, so that we can get rid of all of these mass floors on the zoning mass. I just did that as a quick example to go through those steps again. And you will notice that as I remove those, I no longer have a mass floor schedule. So when you build a new mass, that's going to be your massing of your hotel, and you add floor masses to each of the levels, you should be able to check your square footage to make sure that you're, one, inside this mass. This is your zoning mass. You can't poke outside of this. And you're within 287,000 square feet. What I'd like you guys to start doing for Thursday is begin an intuitive massing study of your hotel. So you can keep this mass that's already built here, but what you're going to do is under massing and site, create a new in-place mass. And you might give it a name, something like hotel, something obvious of what you can differentiate between your zoning mass and a hotel. And you can go through kind of the same steps and start to model within this bubble. And again, you can use your voids, you can cut. You might just kind of play around with the form a little bit. You might just also check to see how big 287,000 square feet is going to be within this bubble. And if you want something to be as tall as this mass, that means you might have kind of a tall, skinny tower in order to get all the way up there. And of course, you don't have to have a mass floor on every single level. You could skip a floor. So if I were to select this mass, and let's just pretend this is your hotel, I could have selected, let's say, levels 5 through 40, and then maybe I only select level 1. And I'm leaving out level 2 and 4 because maybe I want this nice tall atrium or this tall lobby once you first walk in. Whatever you don't check, that floor will not be created at that location that you unchecked. and therefore in your mass floor schedule, you also don't have that calculated as well. So you could play around also with, maybe the first 110 feet, maybe they're taller floors, or maybe they're, less, whatever. You can also start carving out with voids. Just kind of get something roughly around 287,000 square feet, and it doesn't have to be your final, model that you're going to work with. But have something so that on Thursday we can start applying real components to that mass. Okay? Any questions? Again, thanks for the exhibit. The exhibit looks really good, and I'm going to stick around to help out a few of you on that still.
I'm still, the offset is not. It's
It was my hand.
Yeah, if you can plug in and save it on my. I got this E drive.
Architectural architect.
Yeah, well, it's the one, the actual file, that's all of it. I don't know what I could get to work.
Okay.
So I can put a couple others on there.
So if you just throw it on this level E.